So what if the reason you lost your last major argument had, absolutely nothing to do with your facts?
Oh, wow. That is a rough question to start with.
Right. But I mean, think about it for a second. You walk into a meeting, or maybe it's a tense conversation with your partner,
Yeah.
and you have all the data. Your logic is airtight. You present your case flawlessly, and yet,
You hit a total brick wall.
exactly, the other person just digs their heels in. It is incredibly frustrating when you know you have the right answer, but you still, you just can't get the other person to budge.
Well, we see this dynamic constantly. I mean, we operate under this really flawed assumption that human beings are fundamentally rational creatures.
Which we are definitely not.
Right. We like to think we'll naturally change our behavior or our minds if we're just presented with superior information. But human psychology is incredibly messy.
Yeah, to say the least.
We are driven so heavily by emotion, by a need for validation, and by this deeply rooted, almost instinctual need to protect our own sense of self-importance.
Okay, so the ego.
Exactly, the ego. When you just throw facts at someone, you often aren't actually engaging their intellect. You are threatening their ego.
And that is the exact tension we are exploring today. Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. We are unpacking a piece of source material today that attempts to decode all of that messy human psychology.
And we really aren't just reading from some dusty old textbook today.
No, not at all. We're looking at a wildly popular 47-minute anime summary by the YouTube channel called Antidote.
Which is fantastic, by the way.
It really is. This video has racked up over 410,000 views, and it essentially serves as an absolute masterclass on Dale Carnegie's timeless blueprint, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
That's a classic for a reason.
Yeah, and our mission today is to understand how this decades-old wisdom is being repackaged for modern learners, and more importantly, how you can actually apply these principles to navigate the huge egos in your own life.
Well, the video sets an incredibly ambitious stage right from the jump. It promises practical tools to, build trust and boost social skills across both your personal and professional environments.
Right.
But beneath the surface, the whole framework actually demands a massive psychological shift from the viewer.
What kind of shift?
Well, it requires moving away from our natural sort of default state of self-interest and actively cultivating a genuine, authentic interest in the people around us.
That is way easier said than done.
Oh, absolutely. But that shift is the engine driving this entire 30-principle system.
Okay, let's unpack this architecture, because the video is meticulously structured into 4 distinct pillars. We've got 30 specific principles divided across these 4 sections. Let's look at the baseline first.
The foundation.
Right, so the deep dive begins with what they call fundamental techniques in handling people, which gives us 3 principles, and then that's followed by 6 ways to make people like you.
So that's 9 principles right there.
Exactly. 9 different principles, just to establish a basic baseline of getting along with someone. I like to think of these first 2 pillars like the operating system of a computer.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Yeah, because if your basic OS is glitchy, none of the high-level persuasion apps are going to run.
They'll just crash immediately.
Right. But I have to admit, I struggle with this a bit. When I meet someone or when I go into a negotiation, my default is to think about what I want to say next, or how I'm going to prove my brilliant point.
Sure, we all do that.
It feels super counterintuitive to hit the pause button and focus entirely on 9 rules just to be liked. Why do we need so much prep work?
Well, your default reaction is entirely normal, but it highlights exactly why these first 9 principles are so vital. Let's look at the very first rule the video highlights, which is don't criticize, condemn, or complain.
I mean, on paper, that just sounds like basic politeness.
It does, but psychologically, criticism is totally futile because it puts a person on the defensive. It usually makes them strive to justify themselves immediately.
Oh, right, because they feel attacked.
Exactly. When you criticize someone, you aren't actually correcting their behavior. You are wounding their precious pride. And the moment their pride is wounded,
Your operating system crashes.
yes, the trust is gone, and influence becomes literally impossible.
So if I start a conversation by telling a coworker their report was sloppy, even if I'm factually correct, I've already lost the long game. Because I had triggered their defense mechanisms before we even got to a solution.
Yes, you have completely corrupted the hard drive. You have to actively demonstrate genuine interest in them to build up a reservoir of goodwill first.
Which goes to another principle from this section,
Yeah.
right? Become genuinely interested in other people.
Right, and the video really stresses the word genuinely. Because if the other person senses even a hint of manipulation or that you are just, feigning interest to get them to do a favor for you later,
Oh, it backfires completely. People can smell that a mile away.
they really can.
Yeah.
You have to override your own ego and actually care about their perspective.
That actually brings up another principle from this section that always surprises me a bit. The emphasis on a person's name.
Oh, that's a huge one.
The rule says that a person's name is, to them, the sweetest and most important sound in any language. And, it seems like such a small detail. Why is remembering a name treated as this foundational pillar of human psychology?
Because a name is the absolute most potent symbol of a person's individual identity.
Okay, that makes sense.
When you remember someone's name, especially after just a brief encounter, you are subtly communicating that they matter. You're validating their existence and their importance in that space.
And I guess if you forget it, it's the exact opposite.
Exactly. When you forget a name or you mispronounce it without even caring to correct yourself, you're broadcasting that they are totally insignificant to you.
Wow. Yeah, that would kill the trust immediately.
It does. These 9 initial principles are really about establishing psychological safety. You just cannot jump straight into trying to influence someone's behavior if you haven't first established a baseline where they feel respected, heard, and validated.
Okay, so let's say we've successfully installed that operating system. We haven't criticized them, we've shown genuine interest, remembered their name, and we've established a baseline where they actually, like having us in the room.
Which is a great start.
It is, but liking someone is great for friendly rapport. Liking someone doesn't automatically mean you agree with them.
No, it definitely doesn't.
So how do we cross that bridge? How do we go from being well-liked to actually changing their mind about something?
Well, this is where the framework shifts from passive relationship building to a much more active communication strategy. You're moving into the realm of changing perspectives, which, frankly, requires a much more complex set of tools.
And the sheer scale of this next section in the video really reflects that complexity. We are moving into part 3, which is how to win people to your way of thinking. It's a big section.
It's massive. When you look at the timestamps, this section absolutely dominates the video. It spans nearly 17 minutes of the 47-minute runtime.
Wow.
Yeah, and it contains 12 distinct principles. But I actually want to push back on the framing here for a second.
Okay, let's hear it.
The phrase winning someone to your way of thinking. The word winning sounds a bit like a battle to me, like a debate where there is a clear victor and a loser.
Sure, I can see that.
If this whole system is built on authenticity and respect, isn't winning just the wrong mindset entirely?
It is the wrong mindset if you interpret winning as defeating.
Oh, okay.
In this context, winning means courting. It means guiding. What's fascinating here is that the fact that there are 12 separate principles dedicated solely to this one objective proves that this isn't about using a blunt instrument to overpower someone.
Right.
If influence was just about debating someone into submission, you wouldn't need 12 nuanced steps to do it.
You just need one rule. Talk louder and present a better spreadsheet. Exactly. Which we know from painful experience almost never works.
Yeah.
Consider one of the most famous principles in this section. The only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it.
Avoid it completely.
Completely. Because when you directly attack someone's beliefs or tell them flat out that they are wrong, you actually trigger an amygdala response in their brain.
Like a literal fight or flight response.
Yes. They perceive your counterargument as a physical threat, basically. And their psychological response is to dig their heels in deeper, just to protect their worldview.
That makes a lot of sense. If I tell you, hey, you're wrong, I'm not just attacking your idea, I'm attacking your intelligence.
Right.
I'm basically telling you that my brain works better than yours. So how do we actually maneuver around that? Because in the real world, disagreements happen all the time. We have to correct people or advocate for a totally different strategy.
You do it through guided discovery.
Guided discovery, okay.
Yeah. Another key principle here is let the other person feel the idea is his or hers. Instead of handing them your conclusion on a silver platter, you ask targeted questions.
Oh, I love that.
You provide the raw materials, and you let them build the realization themselves. People are just infinitely more committed to ideas that they feel they have generated rather than ideas that have been handed down to them from above.
I see. So Okay, if I'm in a negotiation and I know my vendor's timeline is completely unrealistic, I don't just say, your timeline is impossible.
Right, because that triggers the defense.
Exactly. Instead, I might ask something like, well, how do we account for the potential shipping delays we saw last quarter within this new schedule?
That's perfect.
So I'm presenting the problem, but letting them arrive at the realization that the timeline needs to shift on their own.
Yes, you are dismantling their resistance by validating their agency. You're framing the challenge in a way that actually aligns with their own self-interest.
It really is a subtle art.
It is, and it requires abandoning the need to be the smartest person in the room who gets all the credit for the good ideas.
Which is tough for a lot of people.
Very tough.
Mhm.
But if the goal is getting the result, you have to let go of the ego boost of being the one who proudly announced the solution.
That is a huge paradigm shift. It's not a battle of intellects, it's a collaboration of perspectives. You are relying so heavily on the communication skills you built in those first two pillars.
Exactly.
You use that established trust to gently maneuver them, ensuring you never, ever trigger those self-defense mechanisms. But let's assume we've successfully navigated this minefield.
Okay.
We've used our operating system to build trust, and we've utilized our 12-piece toolkit to align their thinking with our own.
Sounds like we're doing great.
We are. But thinking differently is one thing. Acting differently, actually doing the work, is a whole other beast. How do we take that shared thought and translate it into an actual change in behavior?
Well, moving a person from a shared concept to a concrete action requires a remarkably delicate touch, especially when you are the one trying to orchestrate the change.
Which leads us perfectly to the fourth and final pillar of the framework. Part 4 is titled, Be a Leader, How to Change People Without Giving Offense or Rising Resentment.
And this section gives us our final 9 principles.
Bringing our grand total to 30. That is a lot to remember.
It is, but I want to hone in on the specific phrasing of that title. It's not simply how to be a leader or how to change people.
Right.
It explicitly includes the caveat. Without giving offense or rousing resentment, this proves that the ultimate goal of the entire framework is preserving the long-term relationship.
It's not just a quick fix.
No, it's about sustainable influence. I mean, anyone can extract a quick, resentful compliance from an employee or a family member through threats or ultimatums.
Do this or else.
Exactly. But that isn't leadership. That's tyranny, and it comes with a massive cost.
Because their pride is wounded, and they will literally wait for the very first opportunity to push back or undermine you later on.
Exactly.
You know, it reminds me of a physical therapist helping a patient recover from a major injury.
Oh, that's interesting. How so?
Well, the therapist has a really specific goal. They need the patient to rebuild the muscle and change their physical mechanics. But the therapist can't do the heavy lifting for them.
Sure.
They have to apply careful, targeted pressure. If they push too hard or they try to force the joint, they just cause a new injury.
Which in our case is resentment.
Exactly. The patient just shuts down.
Yeah.
But if the therapist supports them correctly, praises their progress, and gently guides their form, the patient ends up doing the incredibly hard work themselves and they feel stronger for it.
That is a highly accurate analogy, because true leadership removes the friction of change. It ensures the ego is protected throughout the entire process.
Yeah.
Just look at the specific principles in this section. Praise the slightest improvement and praise every improvement. Or make the fault seem easy to correct.
Right, making it feel achievable.
Exactly. When you are leading someone through a behavioral change, you are essentially asking them to step into the unknown. You're asking them to admit that their previous way of doing things was flawed.
And that is super scary for a lot of people.
Terrifying. By praising the slightest improvement, you are providing a psychological safety net of positive reinforcement.
There is one principle here that I find completely fascinating, though. Give the other person a fine reputation to live up to.
I love that one.
It's so cool. How does assigning someone a reputation actually change their behavior?
It leverages a psychological concept known as cognitive dissonance. Humans have a really deep-seated need for their actions to align with their self-image.
Okay, so how does that play out?
Well, if you tell an employee, hey, you have always been one of our most detail-oriented team members, so I know you'll be able to catch the errors in this new report.
Yeah.
You've just publicly assigned them an identity. So if they hand in a sloppy report now, they aren't just failing a task. They are contradicting the positive identity you just gave them.
And people hate that feeling.
They despise it. People will work incredibly hard to avoid that dissonance. They want to live up to the noble image you've painted of them.
It really all comes back to that initial shift we talked about at the very beginning of the deep dive, moving from self-interest to genuine interest in others.
Always.
Even when you are the leader, even when you are the one dictating the change in behavior, you are still centering their emotional needs. You are elevating their self-esteem while getting the job done.
It is the pinnacle of the framework for a reason, because it requires the successful simultaneous application of every single principle that came before it.
That's a good point.
You can't give someone a fine reputation to live up to if you haven't first established trust, avoided criticizing them, and actually made them feel genuinely valued.
It builds on itself perfectly. So having unpacked these 30 principles across the 4 pillars, from the baseline OS of handling people to the careful physical therapy of leadership, I want to zoom out for a moment.
Okay, let's zoom out.
Because the wisdom itself is totally timeless, but the delivery mechanism we are analyzing today is incredibly modern. We are looking at an independent animated summary by Antidote that uses cinematic tools to teach these concepts.
And that's important.
Yeah.
Because the medium through which we consume knowledge drastically impacts how we absorb it and whether we actually apply it.
Yeah, the video uses these distinct character animations by Macrovector to give a visual anchor to these psychological concepts. But what really stood out to me was the overall packaging.
Right, the extra materials.
Exactly. They offer 30-day challenge sheets down in the description, and they include this Master the Art of Human Behavior blueprint.
It's very comprehensive.
And the soundtrack. It is highly curated. We aren't getting a dry academic voiceover here. The creator has layered in dramatic music tracks with titles like Cinematic Fairy Tale Fantasy and Fire and Thunder.
They're basically scoring human psychology like a summer blockbuster.
They really are. But I have to ask, does wrapping complex behavioral science in a shiny cinematic package run the risk of oversimplifying it just to get clicks?
It's a fair question. And it is easy for traditionalists to dismiss animated summaries or dramatic music as mere infotainment.
Right.
However, we live in an era of unprecedented information overload. Attention is the scarcest resource we have. And honestly, the creator's own disclaimer in the video description is remarkably transparent about this.
What do they say?
They state plainly, this summary does not replace the original work. The book contains significantly more depth, nuance, stories, and exercises. So they are not pretending this video is the ultimate definitive masterclass.
So it's more of a gateway.
It is a vital modern primer. By packaging these 30 principles with engaging audio visuals and that dramatic fire and thunder music, Antidote is removing the initial friction of reading a decades-old book.
Making it accessible.
Exactly. But more importantly, the inclusion of those 30-day challenge sheets is a brilliant behavioral mechanism.
How so?
They take these sort of abstract principles, like arouse in the other person an eager want, and they force the viewer to turn them into daily, measurable actions. It bridges the critical gap between passive consumption and active implementation.
It turns theory into practice. And that is what this all means for you, the person listening to us right now. The wisdom of the past isn't locked away in some museum, and it isn't irrelevant to your modern life.
Not at all.
Whether you are navigating complicated office politics or trying to win over a skeptical new client, or, just trying to communicate better with your family, the blueprint is right there.
The tools are incredibly accessible.
They are. The challenge is no longer finding the information. The challenge is having the discipline to put your ego aside and actually apply it.
It really still requires that foundational psychological shift we keep coming back to.
And that feels like the perfect place to wrap up our journey today. We have traced the architecture of influence from the ground up.
We covered a lot of ground.
We did. We started with the foundational operating system, the 9 principles of handling people without triggering their defense mechanisms. Then we navigated the massive 12-principle toolkit required to align minds without starting an ego-driven war.
And then we reach the pinnacle.
Right, the pinnacle of leadership.
Yeah.
Learning how to change behavior and guide growth like a skilled physical therapist. And all of this was viewed through the lens of a highly engaging modern summary that basically proves great ideas never really age. They just adapt to the times.
And as the creator of the video wisely noted, this breakdown is really just the starting line.
Just the beginning.
The true depth of these concepts is waiting for those willing to engage with the full original text and, more importantly, practice these skills in the real world.
So consider this your cinematic trailer for upgrading your social skills. But before we let you go, we want to leave you with a final thought to chew on, something to take with you into your very next conversation.
If you were to audit your own daily interactions right now, which of these 4 pillars, handling the basics, building likability, influencing thoughts, or leading behavior, is currently your weakest link?
Ooh, that's a tough one to answer, honestly.
It is. And what would happen to your relationships and your career if you focused entirely on upgrading just that one pillar tomorrow?
Because remember, human interaction doesn't come with a clean binary instruction manual. It is beautifully, frustratingly messy.
Very messy.
But if you take the time to install the right operating system and you shift your focus from proving you're right to genuinely understanding the person sitting across from you,
You'll be amazed at the results.
exactly, you might just find that you have the tools to navigate that mess like a true master. Thanks for taking the deep dive with us. We'll see you next time.